start the next section. So our next speaker is Dr. Needham. So he's a CEO of what is it?
Velocity Labs.
Velocity Labs. And he started his career as a LC math expert in Pfizer. And then he started his own company, and he by now he owns 6 businesses, right?
8. I started 2 more in the last 6 months.
8, another 2, okay. And 2 of those companies, one of that was recognized the fast growth in 2014. The second one is the current company, right? Was recognized as the fast growth company in 2022. And he has over 200 publications. So without further ado, I will let Dr. Needham start his presentation, right?
Hey, thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm glad to be here, and I feel honored and humbled to be here. And following Chad and Wei, what great advice. I mean, I was writing down, or imprint in my head, mindset, and those are things I think about, cheerleaders and don't fear and all those things. And so my talk's gonna be about living the dream, life of an entrepreneur. And so we talk about work-life balance, we've heard of that, and how can you really have it all, right? And I feel like I've done that, and a lot of that's mindset. Every day I wake up and I say it's gonna be a great day. Why? Because I'm alive, okay? And that's just the mindset that I have. But I really do, there's no work-life balance for me because I feel like I'm on vacation every single day. So I don't really feel like it's work. I'm having so much fun. So I'm gonna be starting businesses, running businesses, and operating businesses until the day I die. But you're also going to see that I have a lot of other things going on in my life that I'm not just painted with one brush. And so my research advisor, she passed on. She says, always start off with a jacket, but then take it off. So I'm gonna take off my jacket here. And I'm not a fan to actually kind of sit behind a podium here. So I'm gonna go down these stairs here, and we're gonna just operate down here because this talk is not about me, it's about you. There's gonna be a lot of time for questions and answers. I'm not even having time, I don't have a stopwatch, I don't have a time clock up here. You decide when this ends, and the organizers will cut us off, okay? So let's see if I can figure out this, even though I have a PhD in science, let's see if I can figure out this. Let's see if I can figure out this. Okay, this is it. This is my beautiful wife, who I married. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. Who I married in 2023. So we've been married for almost a year now, and my life changed because of her. I mean, absolutely, okay? So you're gonna hear a lot about me, but not just me being an entrepreneur. It's about what freedoms can come when you have the right mindset and you have the right passion to move forward and never give up and never be outworked. I am absolutely proud to say I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. I feel he's my Lord, my Savior. We hear a lot about having confidence in our careers. Well, here's why I have confidence in all of my life. Because I know if everything else fails, if I'm not a CEO, if I'm not a founder, if I'm not a bodybuilder, if I'm not all these things, I still am loved by Jesus. And that's a big deal to me, to have that faith. And I can have confidence to take a lot of risk and not fear. That's huge for me. But let's just think about what I am. I'm a husband. I'm a father, 6 beautiful children. Entrepreneur, 8 different companies. Also a scientist. I put on a lab coat nowadays just kind of for show, probably like Chad. Oh, it's picture time. The photo guy wants me in a lab coat. Okay. Also a national champion bodybuilder. I'm the CEO of Velocity Labs. I'm the state champion powerlifter. I'm also a podcaster. I had a podcast during the pandemic. So like Chad, I know how, he was one of my guests, one of my first ones, I think, on my podcast. I'm also an author and so many other things that I'm just very, very grateful for. What I think is important is, why are these things all important to me? Because someday, I won't be a CEO. You should stay tuned for 2 of my books. One of my books talks about a lot of my career and some of the challenges that have happened. Someday I might not own a business. I won't be a national champion bodybuilder again, so I'm probably going to compete again. Probably going to compete in state champion as in powerlifting again. Scientist, I might not be that someday. The last thing I'll probably be as a husband, I'll always be loved by Jesus, but if what we see in people's careers a lot of times, we see this with elite athletes. I could name them, you could name them, right? They retire and what happens? Their life
goes in the toilet, right? I'm not gonna mince my words, that's what happens. Because they were defined by one thing. One thing. And I realized after a few years ago, after some big life changes, I'm like, wow, if that thing is taken away from me, I feel like I've been defined by one thing. I don't ever want to be defined by one thing. That's scary. That's scary, okay? So, these are all the things maybe that I'm just talking about today. You know, not being defined by one definite thing, right? Do we really want to be painted with one paintbrush? I don't. Because when that guy stops painting with that paintbrush, you got one thing left, right? Okay, do I think like Chad, you should be brilliant at one thing? Yes. I worked on serial number 1 SciEx and the first API-MS in the industry in Pfizer. I was in the best biological group there ever. Probably kind of one of the first ones that did LC-MS. Well, it was. And so that's what I kind of fell in love with. And so that's what I became good at as a scientist. But then I didn't realize, man, if I'm only a scientist or I'm only an entrepreneur, there's all these other things that I'm going to be leaving behind. So never be painted with one brush. Never. Be yourself. That's who you are. Am I a CEO? I guess so. You know, am I a founder of 8 different companies? Yes. Am I am a father? Yes, it's very important to me. Am I a husband? Very, very important to me. But I'm Shane Needham. That's who I am. I'm not just any of these other things, you know? And I am honored to think about all the young people in this audience that I think about my career 25, 30 years ago, and watching some people speak. I don't think he's in the room anymore, but Chad talks about emulating somebody, right? Well, Jack Kenyon was in the room. Did you see him?
Yeah.
When I was going through graduate school and working at the same time, get my PhD, Jack Kenyon owned a CRO, he owned a lab like some of the ones that I own, and I'm like, I want to do a lot of things like him. And he walked in when Chad was saying that, and I'm like, oh man, stay here, please, Jack. I want to talk about you. But anyway, so you do have to emulate people, but you are your own person. You can take things from them and say, I want to be like that. You'll also take things from somebody and say, I don't want to be like that. That's how I start every single business of mine. Okay, this is what I want, like in the business, and I don't want to be like this in the business. And so that's very, very important. But again, you're yourself. So I'm only going to have 2 more slides here. I'm going to talk about some of the pillars and some of my leading and motivating teams techniques. But then I want to open it up for questions. I found whenever I give presentations, the best part about it is the Q&A. I guarantee you, especially if you're under 30, okay, I'm not, that's why I have gray hair, right? You have questions. And I want to be here to answer them for you because you inspire me just as much as I may inspire you. So let's talk about, this is all I focus on, these 2 things in my life right there. That's all I control, did you know that? 2 things. My effort, my attitude. Now somebody else's, my effort, my attitude. That's what I focus on. So when I sit back and there might be a problem that we want to make somebody else's problem, or somebody else wants to make our problem, like Chad was talking about, I think back. What do I control here? Yep, I'm moving on. I don't control any of that. So I'm moving on to what I can control. But what do I want to give every single day, including in every single business I start now? Number 1, I want to be generous. And a lot of people say generous. You know, I've been blessed with great resources, and I never thought coming from small town America that I would have what I have, right? But so a lot of people think what generous means is you're going to give lots of money. That's just not it. I give a lot of philanthropy to organizations, right? But I want to be generous with my time, generous with my words, generous with my touch to my kids. Do I hug them? You bet. Gratitude. I think Wade talked, at least hinted on this for sure. And Chad lives like this. I mean, when Chad walked in, I'm like, Chad's like, how's things going? I'm like, oh, it's great. And I said, how's things going for you? He says, oh, couldn't be better. That's gratitude. Do I think he has problems every single day? I know he does. I know he does. He's got a hard client to deal with, a difficult client, a difficult boss, a difficult, maybe, staff member, whatever it is. But when I stop and I think about, oh my gosh, and I ruminate, 80% of our thoughts, if you know this, are negative. Did you know that? 80%. And you know the people that ruminate on that. I'm usually not around them anymore. I choose not to be. Okay, now there's people that are important in my life, like my kids, when they start ruminating, I'm like, stop, sit down, be grateful, maybe say a prayer, okay, be grateful for what you have, okay? And then that, all of a sudden, you get more content, you're more happy, right? So that's what I want to give, is gratitude and generosity every single day. These are what I call the 4 pillars that I live by. This is all I control, and this is what I want to give, okay? And that's it. That's kind of my talk. I'm gonna brush on a book I'm writing about building and motivating teams. I'm also a coach, and I've coached hundreds of wrestlers, and wrestling kind of my thing. All my boys wrestled, and so on and so forth. But so I learned a lot about building teams. And I learned that building a sports team is just, wow, you can apply all these principles to business. But I'm just gonna touch on this. I call it the FACT, F-A-C-T. Why do I call it that? I'll tell you why. I was reading all these books, and I'm dog-earing them, and yeah, I'm the guy that takes highlighters in textbooks and highlights. I don't care. That's fine. And I was dog-earing things and making notes, and I couldn't remember all these things that I was supposed to remember on how to build and motivate teams. So I had to, with my simple mind, I had to come up with an acronym. So I came up with an acronym called FACT, and I actually have trademarked it. I'm going to be writing a book in the next couple of years. Will probably come out. But this is this is how to build and motivate teams. Got to have fun. Got to have autonomy, agency. Fun is not just fun; it's also fulfilling. You got to show competence as a leader to your team, and make sure they're competent. And everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be a part of a big team, right? That's it. That's what I've got. The rest of the time is yours. And so here's the thing. I have a lot of talks like this. I even have a TED Talk online. You can go look at it. I teach a lot of courses at universities and whatnot, or give talks. And if somebody doesn't raise their hand, I'll just randomly call on a person. So either somebody can raise their hand, or I'll just say, hey, you in the white sweatshirt, or whatever it is. I know somebody's has some questions. I want to help you. This is your talk. The rest of this time is yours until we get cut off by the organizers. What questions do you have? There's got to be one. Chad.
So I'll start. I'll make it make it easy for everybody else. So first of all, Shane's TED Talk is the only TED Talk probably in existence where somebody chops wood. So yeah. So that's so you should check that out. But Shane, so when I hear stories of people that are doing everything you're doing, I think, how does that person have more hours in the day than I do? Like, I don't understand how that time thing works. Tell me how you have more hours in the day than most of the people in this room.
Well, thank you very much. I don't have more hours in the day. And these are why there's certain terms and words that are not allowed in my house. Whenever my kids, or even my wife, and she's a harder working person than me, right? And I have nothing bad to say about her, but sometimes she'll say, oh, I don't have time. Oh, you mean you didn't prioritize time, right? That's what I said to my kids too. My kids are, I don't have time to study, Dad. Well, what about the video game you're playing for an hour and a half, right? So I have the same amount of time, but I prioritize it differently. But I don't allow my kids or anybody around me to say I don't have time. I actually don't usually allow teams that I lead to say I don't have time. No, that means we need to prioritize the time, right? And if you say can't in my house, everything stops. Don't ever say can't. Say you're not willing, but don't say can't. That changes your mindset, like Leigh was talking about. When somebody says, oh, I can't lose weight, or I can't get a promotion or whatever, change your mindset to say I'm not willing, and you'll have to do some deep reflecting and say, oh wow, this really is up to me. I get to choose my path, right? Because you're in control of your attitude and your effort, and that's your path, right? So but there are a lot of things I don't put in my life. I think about my high school years, my college years, and a lot of people say, well, why do you think you were so successful? Look, I came from small town America. I'm gonna just be honest. I didn't bring triple digits on my SAT. I'm surprised they let me into college. I think I had an 800 and something. But I wasn't gonna fail. No way. That was not in my mindset. I was not gonna fail. I was gonna be a chemist. I always wanted to be one, and I was going to be one. When I got my first, I actually was on academic probation my first half of the semester, and they wrote me a nasty letter like, hey, Shane, if you don't bring up your grades. I had a D in chemistry. My next test, I got a C+ in chemistry. I was ecstatic. I'm like, whoa, this is great. I can pass this class. But it's just how I prioritize things. And I think about my college and my high school years and younger years. Even when I was at Pfizer with we were all a bunch of 22-year-olds. Look, the choices I made on Friday nights and Saturday nights were a lot different than most other people. It wasn't the things I said yes to, it was the things I said no to. things I said no to is what was more important. For example, I really don't watch TV right now. I just don't. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't watch TV. No, if you enjoy that, watch TV. But by moving, by playing golf, by lifting weights, by being with my family, by constantly moving, constantly thinking, writing papers, writing presentations, doing these things that I do, planning the next forecast for my labs and so on and so forth for my businesses. That's what gets me going. I enjoy it. I really, really enjoy it. And so I just prioritize differently. Maybe, Chad, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. It's a great answer. Yeah.
Yes, Michael. I've known Michael since like should I age ourselves? 1995?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's a long time. Probably before a lot of you were born.
Shane,
Anyway,
I don't have a question, but I have a confession to make. It's about the first time we met. So I met this kid. We were both from Connecticut. I was working on at that time. And he was from Pfizer. And he was in the post. He's bragging about he's going to graduate school in Rhode Island. Right?
yeah, University of Rhode Island.
Yeah, University. And then he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have my own company. So I did not believe that. I said, see, this is funky kid. I mean, you know, I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm so glad you proved me wrong. Right? So I admit that I was wrong. The first time I met you.
That means a lot to me. Can I play on that a little bit? So I have this group of friends. We're all somehow involved in wrestling, and some of us are coaches. One was a Big Ten champion. He's actually taking a run at the Olympics right now. He's pushing close to 40, but he possibly could do it. Anyway, and we call ourselves a Wolf Pack. We're texting each other all the time. But we manifest. That's called manifesting. I didn't know I did this. Somebody from Pfizer said this too. Shane, when you were 23 and 24, you were always talking about the future. I'm like, really? But I still do. I have goals. I've written them down in my office. What I'm going to accomplish by the time I'm 75, and by the time I'm 82 years old. If you want to, I'll tell you about those goals. If you want to meet me for dinner or something, I still have those, and I want to live to 100, and I want to be lifting weights the day before I die. I mean, those are true goals that I have. But it's manifesting it. What your thoughts, what you think will happen, and what your thoughts are telling you is actually what you will do. And so if you're going to be a negative thinker, then guess what? You're going to be stuck in that mindset for the rest of your life. I call that a fixed mindset, not a growth mindset. A growth mindset is, hey, I'm thinking about the future. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to do this. And my kids think I'm crazy, and I love it. Because you know what? I find them thinking like me now. I love that. Okay? Great question or comment, Michael. Thank you. Yes?
Okay, so I'm over 30, but I'm a professor, and so I teach juniors and seniors. How can I get them to be the best that they can be when they graduate? How can I help them get started so that when they go out and get jobs, they can do this, they can be motivated, they can do their job, the best of their ability?
How can they do it the best ability? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a lot of things, and I'm processing this right now, real time. I think it's very important. Words are alive. Now, I like how Chad says it, because I feel this way too. We talk about, while you're in the audience, we think of you as kids, because you probably aren't kids his age and stuff like that, right? So I might use that term, but look, it's not about self-esteem. What we have done in our society is we have taken a self-esteem and say anything you do is okay and being you is okay. That's not true. It's not true. Okay? There are going to be certain things you choose a path in life of X versus Y where one's going to be a good choice and one's going to be a bad choice. Stop lying to people. If you're a teacher, you're an educator, stop lying to people. There will be consequences for choices that you make, right? And it's not just about being who you are and being you. I get it. I want people to be you. Here's what you can say. Here's what I say to my kids. You're going to disappoint me. I'm still going to love you. The teacher can say that.
Mm-hmm. They're my kids.
Yeah. If you're your own kids, you're going to disappoint me. I put my hand on my adult children every single night when I'm with them, and I pray for them and I bless them. Every single night. And they love it. Some of them don't really even think they believe in God right now. And I said, I don't care if you don't. He believes in you. And I believe in you. Believe in them. Your words live. We're not very good at Americans, especially as parents. And I didn't learn this until I learned it from my pastor about 6 or 7 years ago. To really, your words that you tell your kids are alive. So when you tell them they're not good enough, or when a wrestling match or a soccer game really matters to you, that's gonna crush them. I don't care. Here's what I tell my kids. They always say, well, actually, they don't tell me anymore. They don't really tell me their grades. My kids get pretty good grades, of course. But I told them, I don't care what your grades are. I care about your behavior. It's really cool if you get A's, great. But I care about your A student behavior. Well, what's A student behavior, Dad? Did you show up on time? Did you do everything you were told? Did you do extra? Did you ask questions? Did you lead somebody else and try to teach somebody else so you could learn the subject matter more? If you do that, you're probably gonna get good grades, right? But I don't care about outcomes. I care about the process. I care about this journey that's more important, not did you win the soccer game? Well, did you practice enough? You know, whatever. And so that's what I focus on. Tell your kids it's about the journey and the process, not the outcome. In America, it's one thing I love about America, we love outcomes. And that's why sometimes I look at us and we're the most polarized people in the world. We have the best people and the worst people. And I like that about our country. I love that because you can have freedom to do whatever you want, right? But yeah, focus on the process and not the outcomes. And that will really help your kids. And tell them, no matter what the outcome is, I'm still gonna love you. Here's what I used to tell my wrestlers, and I even tell my kids, I'm like, I used to tell my wrestlers, so what's the worst? You lose a wrestling match, your parents are gonna love you tomorrow, the sun's gonna come up, God still loves you, and they just kind of say like, yeah, you're right. Put it in perspective. Try that. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Excellent. Yes.
I'm gonna stand up. My name's Donnie Lee. I'm with Trans-Pacific Communications. That looks like this. I'm gonna do a Van White. I'm not a scientist. I don't even play one on TV. I have trained thousands of scientists. Many of them are here at Pittcon from FDA and other agencies. So I have a panel that's on Thursday afternoon. It's called Entrepreneurship and Scientific Startups. They should have invited you on that panel to be with us, right? So I just wanted you all to know. But aside from that, my son's name is Shane.
Oh, awesome.
And my husband, Michael, he's got the same name here, is from Connecticut. So I do feel like I was here for a reason.
There's a connection. I don't believe in coincidences.
Absolutely. I think my question has to do with the time allocation. I know you do so much. I guess you just have a way of figuring out where to put your, bodybuilding, which I'm sure takes a lot of time, and your family and your children and your business and growing. So how do you have a system? Because I know I have a system that needs to be tweaked. Listening to you, I need to take a page out of your book. What is your system in putting things in blocks and compartments and so on and so forth? That kind of following up on your thing, but I wanted you to drill in a little bit deeper on how do you block those? And there are always things coming at you that are not on your schedule, right? There are people coming at you asking for things and getting you involved and all that. I just wanted to see if you could
Yeah,
share
that's a
some
great
thoughts.
question. And see me afterwards. I would love to help you in any way. And so, how do I block my schedule? How do I prioritize my schedule? And it comes down to habits, right? And so, I'll just give you an example. When I was training to be a national champion bodybuilder, I knew it wasn't a stretch. I'd been lifting for 40 years. Okay, so I had to, at that point, I used to have to start eating 8 to 9 to 10, 12 meals a day. And I'm doing cardio 2.5 hours a day, okay? So I have to make time for that, but I'm taking science calls on this treadmill. I'm doing all those kind of things, but sometimes I have to wake up at 3:30, 4:30. I knew it was gonna be temporary. But I was lifting 6 days a week, an hour each time, right? And so, but how does that happen? Well, you create those habits. That's why I knew I could be a national champion bodybuilder. I didn't think it was a stretch. No, I saw the physiques. I knew I was training. I'm like, I can beat that guy. I just got to change my habits a little bit. I was already 90% there, right? To start another business, well, I've already started 7. How do I start at 8? Well, you go to the state of Delaware and you fill out this paperwork and you get a registered agent and you do this. And you have a vision and a tagline and a mission statement. So it's my habits that I create every day. I usually wake up about 4:30. I also go to bed about 8:30. Okay, I'm usually asleep by 8:30. So sleep is very important, okay? Part of our health, and we gotta get that. But you know, I wake up and I don't touch work for about 2 hours. I usually start taking calls at about 6:30 a.m. my time, my Pacific time. But you know, I get up, I do some stretching, I do some chipping and pitching. Now that I'm getting into golf, and then I read my Bible, I read the Wall Street Journal, I read a self-help book. If that doesn't happen, my day goes bonkers. I have to set aside that time. I did it this morning in my hotel room. The same exact habit. Because if I don't do it, then it just doesn't. I don't put it on the calendar. It's just part of who I am to create those habits every single day. And it's really, it's worked for me, for sure. Yeah.
So a follow-up to that, do you have things that you block off on your calendar that, you know, like that time with your practice? Is that, you know,
Yes,
blocked as if?
it is blocked off on my calendar. Not always, unless I know it's gonna be a tight fit. Like you said, sometimes you get meetings and so on and other force that get thrown at you. And I remember when I was training to be a national champion bodybuilder, I would have on my calendar time, and I would say 22.5 minutes of cardio. That'd be on my calendar. And I mean, and eat this and eat that, eat this 9-10 times a day, whatever. But it's
So
the same.
basically, you're saying you're super disciplined, that many people are not.
You have to be disciplined to be not. Now, here's the cool part about being an entrepreneur. This is why I feel like I'm living the dream and I'm not working. I feel like I'm playing every day and I'm on vacation. You get to a certain part of your life. This is what the cool part about being an entrepreneur. I get to design my schedule and what the rest of my life looks like. Now, do I take important client calls? Of course I do. I also say no to some, right? I get to, is my family more important? Oh, I'm invited to this talk, but my son wants me to come and visit him in New Mexico. It's a no-brainer for me. My son's not gonna be there all the time. That talk, I'm moving on. But I have my own personal vision and mission statements. And just like with a business, my personal ones, they tell me if I should say yes or no to each opportunity.
Are you available at 2:30 this afternoon?
Am I available at 2:30 this afternoon?
Yeah.
Just for you and you, because you have a son named Shane, you bet I'm available.
Okay, just because I have a presentation called Effective Personal Branding at the Pavilion in the Expo. Please come see me.
Okay,
And
see me afterwards. See me
Yes,
afterwards.
I will.
We can connect,
I will.
okay? What other questions you guys have? Hey, by the way, I want to mention him. Remember how I mentioned Jack Kenyon and I emulated him? He's in the room. Jack, can you stand up? Yeah, I mentioned you, Jack. Chad talked about emulating somebody, and Jack, I emulated you, and you mean a lot to me, Jack. Not only as a scientist and an entrepreneur, but a go-getter in life. He was also a wrestler. I learned that a few years ago. Anyway, Jack, thank you very, very much. What are the questions you have? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Shay Bakima. Throughout your presentation, you mentioned how important mindset, having a positive mindset is. But there are often times, maybe in the face of failure or self-doubt, how do you keep that positive mindset in the face of that?
How do you keep the positive mindset in the face of failure? Yeah. I already mentioned it. Gratitude. So it's one reason I pray every morning and every night, and sometimes during the day too. But whenever my mind starts going negative, this is what works for me. So let's just say you're not a believer. That's okay. Just start listing, even writing. For some people, write them down. Write them down what you're grateful for. You know what I'm always grateful for? I'm grateful I'm alive. I mean, and we live in the greatest country in the world. I still believe that. Those are just two things that I am thankful for every single day. And so then I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful. Whenever I start getting my list of gratitudes, my little bitty problem that I had goes away. And sometimes that problem in the time period seems big. But in the scheme of things, when you start going through your gratitude list, to me, that's where your mind switches from self-ruminating negative talk to, oh wow, I have a lot to be grateful for. I'm going to learn from this and make it a positive experience. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Excellent. What other questions do we have? What a great session. Yes?
What are some strategies that you might have with working coworkers or working with people that maybe are more negative
I noticed a couple of things in your vernacular there in the semester that you use. One of the things you said is you can't change people. That's right to a certain extent. Wade talked a lot about growth mindset, so go read Carol Dweck's book and her graduate student Angela Duckworth's book on mindset. Essentially, you can change people's mindset, but you have to use the right words. So as much as I'm kind of like Chad. I'm a direct speaker, probably even more than him. I put my foot in my mouth a lot, right? That's why I work for myself, okay? And so, but you, as much as you want to say, stop being a negative Nelly, that's what you want to say, right? Is you just say, well, that's an interesting thought. Here's what I'm thinking about it. And you make it a positive thing, their mindset will change. You do that again and again and again. Do you think my kids are negative a lot? All the time. All the time they're complaining about things. And I said, well, that's interesting. I'm listening to you. Here's my thought on it. And you change it to a positive. The next thing you know, they turn to be 18, 19, or 20, and they're telling the exact same things to their friends who are negative. So mindsets can change, and we can be responsible for that change just by, remember I told her words live? Words live, man. They do. And what you say can change people's minds. So does that help?
No, definitely, yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah. What a great session. Other questions? What other questions do we have? Yes.
May I ask you, give more secret about the autonomy part? How you can do that when you, especially when you advisor side in a big organization? I know for entrepreneur, you have a lot of freedom to do that.
Well, like Chad said, you hire for strength, right? So the first thing you do is you hire the right people. Put the right people on your team, surround yourself with the right people, and then you can give them autonomy because you trust them. Because you trust them. And believe me, just like Chad, nobody wants to be running a mass spectrometer anymore. Come on. could I go run
Feeling the love.
Could I go well, maybe Chad does, I don't know, I'm not throwing him under the bus, but could I go figure out how to run a 6500 plus? Probably. Do I want to? No, somebody's gonna do it a lot better than me, right? And so, I don't wanna say it's just autonomy. I met with a really good, like, life type coach, executive coach in Boston, this last year. And he says, man, I love your book, I can't wait to read it. He says, but instead of autonomy, think about it as agency. Because we don't really want an autonomous person, right? I mean, if an autonomous person gets to do everything that they want, no. So, agency, so I'm like, I gotta kind of study up on agency. Well, what agency means, you set the right climate, the right mission, and the right vision for the company, and then they know what they can be autonomous with, right? Because they can't be autonomous. Nobody can be autonomous in any organization all on their own. We don't want that. So it's more like agency. I love it because it still is an A and it fits in my book. So autonomy and agency. So it's more like agency. Set the right climate, trust them. It's hard for me as an entrepreneur and somebody who has a strong leadership personality to sit back and sometimes say, man, I know that's not the right decision, but I'm gonna let them make it. And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And that's what, like Chad was saying earlier, who cares? I loved my time at Pfizer. I loved it. What I was frustrated with me is nobody make a decision. And here's, as an entrepreneur, I love making decisions. Because if decision A doesn't work, who cares? Now we'll go to decision B. At least you make one. You're not paralyzed. And I think in large organizations, sometimes they're not given enough agency and empowerment to make decisions, so none are made. That's frustrating to me. Even if it's the wrong decision, make it and change. But agency, study a little bit up, and I know you're a studier. So on agency and autonomy and how they're related. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Excellent.
I
Excellent.
got it, agency.
Excellent. What other questions do you have? Yeah.
So, how do you,
Sorry, can we move to the next speaker? Yeah, because I think the next speaker is already waiting for.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry
I was
about that.
listening to the
Sorry about that.
organizers.
Because
Yeah,
we're
thank
like
you.
15 minutes late. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If you need to catch me after this session or at 2:30 or at the dinner tonight, I will be at all of those. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And
Here's how you can get a hold of me, by the way, from my personal website, at Velocity, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, or X. I guess it's called X now. Excellent.
All right, thank you so much. Sharon. Yeah.
Thank you.
So now you know the secret how to build up 8 companies, right? So our next speaker is Dr.